Okay, I have a few updates for all of you at the top. Today, President Biden will meet with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. President Biden's first phone call, as you all know, was to a foreign leader, was to the Prime Minister, and it's fitting testament that this is his first bilateral meeting. The President will highlight the strong and deep partnership between the United States and Canada as neighbors, friends, and NATO allies. Both leaders will review joint efforts in areas of mutual interest and establish a roadmap for an ambitious and whole-of-government approach on issues such as recovery from COVID-19, a sustainable and inclusive economic recovery, tackling the climate crisis, advancing diversity and inclusion, bolstering security and defense, and strengthening global alliances. Vice President Harris, along with the Secretaries of State, Defense, Treasury, Transportation, and Homeland Security, and the Special Presidential Envoy for Climate, will also be participating in the bilateral session with their Canadian counterparts. Today, the President will also meet virtually with a group of Black essential workers to thank them for their critical roles during the pandemic and to discuss how to encourage vaccinations. The COVID-19 pandemic and the corresponding economic crisis are devastating Black communities. While Black Americans comprise 13% of the U.S. population, they represent nearly 24% of age-adjusted deaths from COVID-19. The President also looks forward to discussing how his American Rescue Plan will deliver immediate relief to the participants, their communities, and the American people by keeping frontline workers on the job with $350 billion in emergency funding for state and local governments, providing $1,400 per person checks to working families, and investing $160 billion in supplies, testing, vaccinations, and public health workforce to defeat the virus. Today, on his weekly governor's call with America's governors, our COVID coordinator, Jeff Zients, announced the 5th consecutive week of supply increases. States will now receive 14.5 million doses this week, up from 8.6 million doses per week when the President took office. That's an increase in vaccine allocations of nearly 70% during the Biden-Harris administration. The retail pharmacy program has also performed well despite the winter storm. We announced last week an increase of 1 to 2 million doses, and our COVID coordinator, Jeff Zients, I should say, conveyed to the governors we will increase that allocation by 100,000 doses this week. Thanks to the President's efforts, we are also on track to have enough vaccines for 300 million Americans by the end of July, and we continue to encourage Americans to mask up, respect social distancing, and abide by the public health guidelines. One more update from here, two more updates on the winter storm. Yesterday, FEMA announced that Texas homeowners and renters in 31 additional counties who suffered damage from the winter storm may now apply for individual disaster assistance. The 31 additional counties join the 77 counties previously approved for individual disaster assistance. In Texas, Louisiana, and Oklahoma, sheltering operations continue to decrease, power and transportation are back to normal, and water restoration continues. However, 9.8 million people are affected by water system outages and remain under boil water notices. Over 9 million liters of water have been delivered or are en route. There are over 200 locally managed water distribution sites supported by local, federal, private sector, and donated resources. Finally, I have one travel announcement, which you all have been asking about. We, of course, remain in close touch with state and local elected officials to monitor the recovery. And on Friday, the President and the First Lady will travel to Houston. The President will meet with local leaders to discuss the winter storm, relief efforts, progress toward recovery, and the incredible resilience shown by the people of Houston and Texas. While in Texas, the President will also visit a COVID health center where vaccines are being distributed. Clearly, there are still more details of the trip coming together, and as we have those, we will make those available to all of you. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. Two questions. S&P reported this morning that home prices are up 10% over the past year. We've seen inventories of homes for sale at record lows, and that means first-time buyers aren't able to make the step into housing that's been a bedrock of middle-class identity. What is this administration doing on housing affordability? What do you do with runaway prices?
Well, the President is committed to ensuring home ownership is something that more Americans can participate in. He knows owning a home is a key measure of building generational wealth, and he has already taken steps through executive actions to help provide some security to Americans struggling to keep their homes in the midst of this crisis by extending foreclosure and forbearance moratoriums. The American Rescue Plan would also provide $10 billion for the Homeowners Assistance Fund to help struggling homeowners keep up. And as part of the broader Build Back Better agenda, which I know you're all eager to hear more about, one of the tenets he is, of course, interested in is looking for ways to increase the supply of affordable housing, making it easier for more people to buy homes.
And then you've been asked repeatedly about how we should properly memorialize the deaths from the coronavirus. After last night's service, has this administration given any more thoughts in terms of how to honor the dead?
Well, first, I don't know. I watched last night, and I'm pretty, I've seen a lot of presidential events, and I found myself getting choked up when I watched the events happening on the television screen in my office last night. And the president and the vice president will continue to look for ways to memorialize the lives that have been lost and remember the families. But our view here is that the best memorial we could offer to those who have lost their lives to COVID is to end this pandemic and reduce the number of others who would otherwise perish and the number of families who will be impacted. And that's our focus now. And when we have this crisis behind us, we're at a war, as we've said many times, we will consult broadly on the proper way to mark this horrible loss of life. And certainly we're open to that, but at this point of time, our focus is on the pandemic and saving more lives. Go ahead.
Thank you. Does the White House have a plan B if Tandon doesn't work out? And could you give us a sense of what that looks like?
Well, the White House's focus, the president's focus, is on working toward the confirmation of Neera Tandon to lead, to be the OMB director. That is our focus.
And could you say anything about Gene Sperling or Ann O'Leary, who've also been floated recently?
There's one candidate to lead the Budget Department. Her name is Neera Tandon, and I can give you a brief update, though, on kind of the outreach that's happened. And I know there's been a couple of questions along those lines. She has had 44 meetings now with senators of both parties. She's spoken with 15 senators from both parties since Friday. Some of those were repeats of people she had spoken with previously, but as I noted yesterday, she's committed to rolling up her sleeves, having those conversations, answering questions as they come up, reiterating her commitment to working with people across the aisle, and also sharing some of her own experience of working with people of different viewpoints.
Quickly, on the Supreme Court decision to allow Trump's tax returns to be shared with New York prosecutors, I just wondered if you had a reaction.
Sure. There's been reporting through many of your sources, probably yours as well, of multiple other ongoing investigations. So we're not going to comment on this specific ruling. The president did make clear on the campaign trail that the American people expect and deserve transparency from their president. That's why he released over 2 decades of his own tax returns.
Oh, go ahead. On the Canada meeting, I just wanted to see if you could say a little bit more about what Biden plans to bring up with Trudeau, and also what his view is of this decision by Canada recently to make Facebook pay for news content.
Well, the president's focus of the meeting will be to continue to discuss ways for them to work together on multiple levels on the crises that are facing both countries, whether it's COVID-19 or getting our economy back. There's obviously a long bilateral relationship and an important one, hence the first bilateral meeting. I'm not sure, I don't have anything on that particular, I don't have any reaction in particular on Canada's announcement. I can talk to our team and see if there's more to provide on that front. Okay, go ahead.
On the outreach to senators by Neera Tandon, you said 44, 15 since Friday?
Mm-hmm.
You know if that includes Senator Manchin, Senator Collins, Senator Portman, among those who said yesterday at least that they hadn't heard from her?
It includes a number of Republicans. Obviously, Republicans or any members, I should say, are free to share whether they've communicated with her or other nominees or not, but we're not going to read out specific names from here.
Has the president made any calls to senators for nomination?
The president is in touch with a range of members of Congress about issues ranging from the American Rescue Plan to his nominees. I don't have any other calls, though, to read out from him either.
So that's a maybe.
That is, I don't have any more calls to read out.
Okay. On Keystone XL, I know that's one issue that will come up today.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the Canadian Prime Minister feels differently about this than the President does.
Mm-hmm.
Administration officials said that decision, which was a day one decision, had essentially used the Obama administration's assessment as the reason to go back, I believe is what they said. There was no other reason to explore it. There is an economic effect, though, of course, now. About 11,000 people had jobs connected to this in the United States, at least. What does the White House say to those people, to the Canadian workers who now are going to be out of a job if this pipeline is indeed shut down?
Well, let me first say that it was the Obama-Biden administration when the assessment was done, and done by the State Department at the time. And the president was very consistent through the campaign and even before then about his view that it should be revoked. And he had conversations, of course, with the Prime Minister about it. The Prime Minister raised his concerns directly with the President, has previously, and he's, of course, welcome to today. But the President made clear that this is a commitment he has made in the past, that it's not in the interest of the United States, and that we want to try to address our climate crisis while also creating good-paying union jobs. And he has a plan. He has talked about his plan, I should say, on the campaign trail to create millions of clean energy jobs. And he is eager to continue to work with the policy team and outside stakeholders and experts on delivering on that in the months ahead. But he believes you can do both, and he has been consistent about his opposition to the Keystone Pipeline.
And then the Senate's launched this inquiry into the Capitol assault on January 6th. You know that the House is going back and forth on the composition of a potential commission that would look into this further. There are proposals that include the president appointing some of those positions to a commission. Does the White House have any opinion on that? Is it weighing in at all with lawmakers as they put that together?
Well, we certainly support the desire and the interest of members of Congress to put together a commission. It's up to them to make that determination. We've been in touch with them about a range of options, but I don't think there's anything final at this point, so I don't have anything more to read out on our particular view on which proposal.
And would there be concern that there could be overlap or conflict with whatever the Justice Department is doing in terms of investigations and prosecuting some of these people?
Sure. Well, I'm certain we would venture to avoid that, but of course, any investigation, any process of moving forward toward a prosecution would be done independently by the Justice Department, and that is a commitment the President is firm on.
And in his conversations with lawmakers, have there been any other conversations about a joint address to Congress? I know you got asked about this recently. And if it's not in person, would he be willing to do it virtually if he had to?
Sure. Well, he's clearly willing to hold events virtually, hence the bilateral meeting today with the Prime Minister of Canada, and we're certainly open to a range of formats. I don't have any update on a date or a timeline for a joint address. Go ahead. Go ahead, and I'll come around to you. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. I want to ask you about a report that's out that the Biden administration is prepared to sanction Russia for the SolarWinds hack, but also a range of other malign cyber activities. Are you able to confirm that those sanctions are coming down?
Well, first, we announced our ongoing review, and the President spoke about it in his conversation with President Putin just a few weeks ago. We have asked the intelligence community to do further work to sharpen the attribution that the previous administration made about precisely how the hack occurred, what the extent of the damage is, and what the scope and scale of the intrusion is. And we're still in the process of working that through now. But it will be weeks, not months, before we respond. But I'm not going to get ahead of the conclusion of that process.
Any more specific on the timeline as far as weeks? I mean, are we talking by the end of this month, or can you put any more final point on it?
The end of this month is a couple days away. That would be a very short
true.
timeline. I was thinking, is it March yet? Weeks, not months, is the best definition I can give for you. Of course, we want to focus on giving our team the time they need to take additional steps to fine-tune the attribution, and we reserve the right to respond at a time and a manner of our choosing.
And then on the Tandon nomination, Senator Murkowski said yesterday that she had not heard from the White House, even though she's undecided. Was that an oversight by the White House, and has that been rectified? I mean, has she been reached out to since then?
Well, again, Neera Tandon is rolled up her sleeves. She's getting to work. She's working the phones. People here are working the phones, and we're just not going to provide day-by-day updates on exactly each senator in office that we've communicated with, but they can communicate on their own, of course, if they've been reached out to, or what communication they've had.
And then on the Canada visit, I wanted to clear up something you had said the other day,
Okay.
which is on the Buy American provisions. You had said there's essentially no changes and the Canadians had raised concerns about whether they would be able to obtain waivers like they did during the Obama administration. So when you said you didn't anticipate any changes to that policy, did you mean to suggest that the Canadian companies will not be able to obtain waivers under the policy?
No, I appreciate that, or I appreciate the ask for clarification, I should say. Of course, the president signed a Made in America executive order in the first week, I believe, of the administration, and we're still evaluating the application of that and how it will apply. I don't expect him to make any commitments during the meeting today.
Okay, and then just one more logistical thing on the Canada visit. Usually during these foreign leader visits, obviously, as you know, there's a 2-and-2 element for the questions. So are we going to see that later this afternoon with Prime Minister Trudeau?
I don't expect that's going to be part of the program today. Obviously, there are several components, as I noted, a smaller meeting, a more expanded meeting, and then some comments at the end, but that's the program at this point in
Will
time.
you commit to it for future foreign leader visits?
It certainly has been standard in the past, and I can assure you that in the future there will be 1-and-1 and 2-and-2 and other opportunities to ask questions, even when foreign leaders are not visiting. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jen. A few on immigration really quick. Merrick Garland was asked yesterday if illegal entry at the border should remain a crime, and he said, I haven't thought about that question. Does President Biden believe that illegal entry at the border should remain a crime moving forward?
Well, I think he was being asked as the Attorney General, the future Attorney General. I think he's looking to head to be confirmed of the United States, and if he wants to make considerations independently, he can certainly do that. But the President's spoken to this, and we believe in abiding by our laws. As you know, there, of course, is a process underway at the Department of Homeland Security to take a fresh look at prioritization and who is detained and who is sent back home. So that is something happening from the Department of Homeland Security. But again, if he's going to lead an independent Justice Department, and it's his prerogative to take a look at any policies under their purview.
And to that point, why is the Biden administration reopening a temporary facility for migrant children in Texas?
Well, first, the policy of this administration, as you well know, but just for others, is not to expel unaccompanied children who arrive at the border. And the process, how it works, is that Customs and Border Control continue to transfer unaccompanied children to the HHS Office of Refugee Resettlement. That can take a couple of days. I just want to give this context because people need to understand the process. But because of COVID-19 protocols, like social distancing requirements, the capacity of existing Office of Refugee Resettlement shelters has been significantly reduced because, of course, you can't have a child in every bed. There needs to be spacing, and we abide by those spacing to protect the kids who are living in those facilities for a short period of time. And to ensure the health and safety of these kids, HHS took steps to open an emergency facility to add capacity where these children can be provided the care they need before they are safely placed with families and sponsors. So it's a temporary reopening during COVID-19. Our intention is very much to close it, but we want to ensure that we can follow COVID protocols as unaccompanied minors come into the United States.
But it's the same facility that was open for a month in the Trump administration. Summer 2019, that is when Joe Biden said, under Trump, there have been horrifying scenes at the border of kids being kept in cages, and Kamala Harris said, basically, babies in cages is a human rights abuse being committed by the United States government. So how is this any different than that?
We very much feel that way. And
So
these are facilities, let me be clear here. One, there's a pandemic going on. I'm sure you're not suggesting that we have children right next to each other in ways that are not COVID safe, are you?
I'm suggesting that Kamala Harris said that this facility, putting people in this facility, was a human rights abuse committed by the United States government, and Joe Biden said, under Trump, there have been horrifying scenes of at the border of kids being kept in cages. Now, it's not under Trump, it's under Biden.
This is not kids being kept in cages.
But
This
it's
is
the
this
same
is
facility.
kids. This is a facility that was opened that's going to follow the same standards as other HHS facilities. It is not a replication, certainly not. That is never our intention of replicating the immigration policies of the past administration, but we are in a circumstance where we are not going to expel unaccompanied minors at the border. That would be inhumane. That is not what we are going to do here as an administration. We need to find places that are safe under COVID protocols for kids to be, where they can have access to education, health and mental services, consistent with their best interests. Our goal is for them to then be transferred to families or sponsors. So this is our effort to ensure that kids are not in close proximity, and that we are abiding by the health and safety standards that the government has been set out.
Just quickly on climate. Last week, the climate envoy, John Kerry, said that there are only 9 years left to save the world from the effects of climate change. Does President Biden share that assessment? 9 years.
I don't have a new timeline to give you from here. I can confirm for you, though, that the president agrees with former Secretary Kerry that it's a crisis, that time is of the essence. We need to act quickly, and that's why climate is a key part of his agenda. Go ahead.
I have follow-ups on immigration. I know Caitlin's.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Caitlin.
Go ahead.
I can wait for your immigration.
Well, yeah, just because, picking up on this discussion about the HHS facility versus Customs and Border Protection facilities. There's a law that says you're supposed to get kids out of those facilities, the CBP facility, within 3 days.
Yes.
But data we obtained said that there were at least 179 kids had spent more than 3 days in those kinds of facilities in January, despite internal policy dictating that all minors should get out within 3 days. Immigration attorneys that work with these kids, advocates, seeing all of this and saying, this isn't that much better than what was going on before. In regards to the HHS, the use of the HHS facility, they say it's a step backwards. So there's the criticism that was made by candidates Biden and Harris, and then there's the criticism concerned now of these attorneys who work with and represent these children who say, this isn't much different than what the Trump administration was doing.
Well,
What say you?
let me first say that you're right, that there's about a 72-hour time frame where kids should be transferred from CBP facilities to HHS-sponsored facilities, and that is certainly our objective. In terms of the specific kids that you mentioned, I would send you to DHS to give you more information on that. But that is not what we are hoping to achieve. We want these kids to be in facilities where they are getting access to health and medical assistance, to education. As you know, there are a number who have come into the country, and we're trying to manage that as well and ensure that we are able to transfer them as quickly as possible. Not just to stay in the HHS facilities either, to get them into families and sponsored homes. That is our human and moral objective from this administration. But I would send you to DHS for any more specifics on those kids. It's a fair question.
And I asked you a few weeks ago when you guys announced the outlines of the immigration executive orders, what is the message to people in Central America who are thinking of making this trip? You gave an answer then. I guess I'd ask you, is the administration, is the U.S. government doing enough to make clear to that part of the world it's not worth making this kind of a trip?
Well, we can always do more. And I think the challenge here, as you know, is that people are fleeing prosecution. They're fleeing very difficult economic circumstances and hardship, and there hasn't been enough time to do enough to impact the circumstances in the ground in a number of these communities. And obviously, as these unaccompanied kids come to the border, it's completely heartbreaking. We're not going to expel these kids. We want to process and get them into facilities as quickly as possible, but certainly we're always looking for ways to do more, to communicate more effectively and clearly with communities in the region about why this is not the time to come. We need more time to put in place a humane and moral immigration system.
Parents should not be sending their kids north right now.
Absolutely not. This is not the time to come. We have not had the time to put in place an immigration system, an immigration policy. We don't have the processing we need at the border. Obviously, we're continuing to struggle with facilities to ensure that we're abiding by COVID protocols. So this is definitely not the time to come. Go ahead, Caitlin.
Okay, back to Neera Tanden.
Sure.
Tomorrow the committee is set to vote on her. Does the White House still expect that tomorrow she will be President Biden's nominee to run the budget office?
That's certainly our expectation. And as I noted earlier, Neera is rolled up her sleeves. She's getting to work. We're getting to work. And we understand that we need to continue to engage with range of members from Democrats to Republicans, and we're going to keep doing that. But she's the president's choice because she's experienced and qualified, and we continue to stand there.
So you're talking about the outreach to Republicans. What we're seeing with this, potentially being derailed is how one senator can really derail potentially the president's staff picks or his policy potentially with the minimum wage, maybe not making it to the coronavirus relief bill. Is he frustrated by that, and how does he plan to handle that going forward?
Well, the president comes to this role having served 36 years in the Senate, so he has the benefit of experience of recognizing the power of any one individual senator or one individual member, and he certainly respects that. We disagree, as we talked about a little bit yesterday, with the senators who have come out in opposition to Neera Tanden, but we all are also going to look for ways to work with them on the president's agenda, and that's the experience he takes and the perspective he takes to this office.
Senator Manchin has proposed an $11, or says he will propose an amendment that would make the minimum wage increase $11, not the $15 that President Biden has proposed. Would he sign a coronavirus relief bill that had an $11 minimum wage in there?
Well, the president proposed $15 because that's what he feels is right for the American workers, I should say, and the men and women who are working hard, just trying to make ends meet. And that's why that number was in his package. It hasn't even passed the House yet. We expect that to happen this weekend. There'll be an opportunity for Senator Manchin and others to put forward ideas and proposals, and we'll see where that process lands. But he proposed the $15 increase for a reason, and he stands by it.
And he said that he would be open to compromise with this. So is $11 something that he would be willing to compromise with Manchin on?
Again, there's going to be a process that works its way through the Senate. We don't even know where it's going to end up outside of when it works its way through the bird bath. I just want to keep just using that phrase here. And we expect that to happen in the next couple days, and then we'll see where it goes from there.
Okay, my last question is on the meeting with Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau. Canada wants to get vaccines from the U.S., mainly the Pfizer plant in Michigan, but so far the U.S. has a contract with them that their first 100 million doses are going to the U.S., and they expect that, according to the advisors, by the end of June. So does that mean Canada should not expect to get vaccines from the U.S. until at least this summer, until at least June?
Well, the president's first priority is ensuring every American is vaccinated. And our focus right now is getting shots in arms at home. He looks forward to engaging with the Prime Minister, as we've already discussed. And there are multiple ways we can work together on a COVID response. All options are on the table down the road, but I don't have anything to update you on about Pfizer providing vaccinations, other than we remain committed to getting Americans vaccinated.
So you don't expect him to give Prime Minister Trudeau any kind of timeline of when they can expect to be able to receive vaccines from the U.S. and Canada?
I don't anticipate that, no. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Two questions, if I might. The first one, polls have shown that 3/4 or so of Republicans still apparently believe that the election was stolen. This is what the president calls the big lie, and obviously that has been connected to the events of January the 6th, which some liken to terrorist action and so on. So another serious issue. How does the president feel about former President Trump going to CPAC this weekend? He'll have a huge audience. It's an enormous platform. Does the president think that's actually a problem, a threat, in his view?
Well, the president's view is that we've spent a whole lot of time, not we, but in this briefing room, talking about President Trump over the last few years, I guess for good reason. He was president, and that his view is we're going to spend the time focusing about the American people and our objectives to help them and our commitment to helping them. So I wouldn't say he's thought a lot about the former president's visit to, I was going to say performance, maybe that's appropriate, at CPAC.
But if he goes with the former guy's strategy, which I guess you could boil it down to that, obviously former President Trump isn't just going to sit on his hands. He's got his message to give out, and the point is this message, according to President Biden, is literally dangerous. So does he have a problem with such a high-profile person giving out what he thinks is a dangerous message?
Well, we haven't even seen the former president speak at CPAC. Obviously, President Biden has spoken to his concerns about the rhetoric of the former president, how he was unfit for office. That's why he ran against him and why he defeated him. But we're not going to spend too much time here focused on or talking about President Trump, former President Trump.
Afghanistan. Given the concerns about the timeline of this withdrawal, and it all looks rather up in the air now, and is the president worried in the longer term, bigger picture? Is he worried that the Taliban are going to take over Afghanistan once the US pulls out?
Well, obviously, there's a timeline for a decision on the next steps here. I don't have any update on that. And once that's made, we can certainly have that conversation.
Would he be okay with that? If the Taliban ruled Afghanistan?
Certainly, I wouldn't say he would, no, I don't think he would say he'd be okay with that. But again, there's an ongoing process of considering the next steps in Afghanistan. That's an ongoing discussion, and I'm not going to get ahead of where that sits at this point in time. Go ahead.
Yes, two questions, if I may. The first, we're approaching tax season, and by some estimates of the unemployment assistance that states have paid out, more than half of it Americans have not withheld taxes on. So is the administration concerned that there may be millions of Americans who are going to face a surprise tax bill, some of whom are still unemployed? And has the administration considered changing the way the IRS looks at least the pandemic-related unemployment assistance, treating it like disaster aid, and so it doesn't have taxes withheld?
That's a really interesting question. I would certainly send you the Treasury Department for that. I'm happy to help you make a connection there to discuss that further.
And the other question is, does the administration have a response to the raid in the Republic of Georgia where the top opposition leader was arrested by government forces yesterday? Is there any consideration of sanctions or other kind of pressure on the government of Georgia?
Yeah, I certainly saw the reports this morning. I didn't have a chance to talk to our national security team, but we'll venture to get you something after the briefing on that as well. I didn't help you much today. I'll try to do that after the briefing. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. A few points, but I just want to pick up on what Sebastian was asking about former President Trump first.
Sure.
It sounds like you just plan to ignore him and essentially try to deprive his message of oxygen. But do you plan, or does the White House plan rather, to engage with him in any way, particularly if he launches political attacks on this administration and its policies?
In what way engage with him?
I mean, push back in any way on those? I mean, again, as you said, can't know what former President Trump will say during CPAC, but it's pretty likely he'll have some things to say about the sitting president in this administration. So do you plan to engage with him on those things, or
I guess we'll have to watch and see. But our overarching objective is to keep the focus not on any one individual, whether it's the current president or the former president, but on the American people and what we're doing to help bring them relief, to get the pandemic under control. And certainly there's been more than enough time spent on former President Trump. And so if there's not a reason to do it, we're probably not going to be adding more commentary on it.
On the topic of immigration, the Biden administration is also reopening a detention center in Florida, formerly known as the Homestead Detention Facility. The administration plans to house migrant teens in that facility. Will that also be a temporary emergency center like the one you were discussing before?
I'd have to talk to the Department of Homeland Security about that. I would certainly send you to them to talk to them more specifically and directly about it.
It was also privately run before, which is part of the question here, is if whether or not the Biden administration plans to have that privately managed again, given the pledge by the president to close down privately run detention facilities.
Absolutely. I know you've asked this question before, and I'd be happy to connect you with someone from the Department of Homeland Security. They obviously oversee those facilities, so they're best prepared to answer any questions on it.
Could I ask one more on Florida? We're on
Go ahead.
Florida, let's just stay on Florida.
That's okay. Big Florida Day.
All right, so there are reports that President Biden is considering former Florida Senator Bill Nelson to be his NASA administrator. Are those reports accurate? Is he under consideration? And when do you expect an announcement?
I don't have any personnel announcements for you or any expectation of when we will have an announcement on a NASA administrator or a list of potential people. But that's an interesting one. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. A couple questions, one for another colleague who can't be here today, but I wanted to start with one more on the Neera nomination.
Sure.
Does the administration believe there's a double standard at play here, that Republicans and perhaps some Democrats are pointing to her partisan tweets, offensive tweets, as a reason to oppose her nomination, and that they have not held certain men to the same standard?
Well, the president was proud to nominate a historic set of nominees who not only were, many of them were barrier breaking, including Neera Tanden, but also incredibly qualified and experienced. And he certainly believes that members of the Senate are going to consider them and will continue to consider them with the best of intention. So from here, we're going to keep our eyes focused on outreach to Democrats and Republicans and working toward getting Neera Tanden confirmed so we can get the budget process moving.
from a colleague regarding Postmaster General DeJoy and his appearance before the House Oversight Committee tomorrow, and some proposed changes that he has put forth that some people are concerned will slow down mail further, raise the cost of mail, do away with airmail. The question is there any indication when President Biden will appoint members to the 3 vacancies of the Board of Governors for the Postal Service?
Sure, it's a great question. It is a priority for the president to appoint, to announce the appointment of, I should say, additional members of the Board of Governors. As you are familiar with, but others may not be, it's really up to the Board of Governors to determine the future leadership of the Postal Service, and we certainly recognize that filling those vacancies is an important step in that process. So it's a priority. I don't have a timeline for you on when those will be announced, though. Go ahead in the back.
Thank you, Jen. About the bilateral between the Prime Minister and the President, the expression used is a roadmap for renewing Canada-U.S. relationship. From the White House and the President standpoints, how did the relationship needed mending?
How did it need mending?
Yes.
Well, I think that the objective for the president is to look forward and to continue to build the relationship with Prime Minister Trudeau, obviously who he knew previously from when, or had engaged with previously from when he was vice president, and to work together on addressing many of the shared crises we're facing, from economic downturn to COVID-19 to issues in the global community. And I don't know that they're going to spend a lot of time analyzing the past. They're going to look to the future.
Still, does the President feel that the relationship was in bad shape when he got into the White House?
The president views his role as in the global community as one who needs to rebuild relationships, rebuild trust with a range of partners, including the Canadians, and that's why this meeting today will be forward-looking and focused on a range of topics.
Trust that was damaged in the last 4 years.
Well, we'll leave that to the Prime Minister to speak to, but certainly we're eager to continue to build the relationship moving forward.
Another question, Jen, thank you. Another question is, we're talking a lot about the economic relationship and restarting the North American economy. Would the reopening of the border be considered? Because this is a major point, like blocking the economies from working.
The Canadian border?
Yes, the Canadian-U.S. border being closed for a year now. Do you know if it's going to be discussed, and if we can see an end to this in the short run?
Related to COVID-19 or related to?
So in the roadmap, there's this discussion of restarting the North American economy. We have the COVID crisis at the moment, but the closing of the border and the possibility of improving the economies between the country and the North American economy at large. You think they'll be discussing the reopening of the border faster than not?
I'm sure there'll be a range of topics discussed, and obviously they'll both bring up issues. I can only speak to what President Biden will bring up, and we'll have a readout after the meeting. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. I have a couple on COVID, but first I'd like to follow up on the homeownership question from the top.
Sure.
So the president's economic plan from the campaign trail had a provision in there for the $15,000 first-time home buyer tax credit. Can we expect the president to push for that in not the American Rescue Plan, but the recovery plan that's to come shortly afterward?
Well, our focus right now is on getting the American Rescue Plan through. We expect the House to pass it this weekend, and then it will go to the Senate. And as we've been talking about a little bit here, there'll be a robust discussion about members' views on different components of it. I don't expect we're going to preview or make necessarily final decisions on what comes after. But as you noted, there are a number of components of the Build Back Better agenda that the president talked about on the campaign trail. Obviously, home ownership, caregiving, infrastructure, strengthening access to affordable health care. Those are all components that are under discussion. The order, the timeline, that's what has not been determined at this point.
And then on COVID, Jake Sullivan's been expressing some concerns about the World Health Organization's latest assessment, specifically because China has not really handed over any of its data from the early months.
Yeah.
So when can we see some traction on a U.S.-led assessment, like Sullivan's been suggesting, or perhaps some details on how we can force the world community to
exert pressure on China to open up its doors and be transparent.
Well, you're right that one of the concerns that we've expressed from here is a lack of data sharing. We've not seen the initial data or the base of data that the report has been based on, and we have concerns and questions about the process used to reach the final conclusions. What we've been calling for and will continue to advocate for is an open, transparent international organization led by the World, investigation led by the World Health Organization. And certainly getting to the bottom of what happened here, preventing it from happening in the future is a topic of conversation and a range of conversations the President has, the Secretary of State, our National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan has, and I expect those will continue.
And then on that same report, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Matt Pottinger from NSC have both come out and said they still believe that coronavirus somehow originated from a research facility in Wuhan. Do you know if President Biden has made a determination on whether or not gain-of-function research facilities like the Wuhan Institute of Virology should be eligible for U.S. funding? They currently are, even though they're not slated to receive any money in the near future.
Again, there'll be, we support a robust international investigation. We also have taken steps under the State Department to ensure we have full staffing in our Beijing embassy to ensure we have eyes and ears on the ground. As you noted, there's no funding anticipated or planned to go to that facility at this point in time, so I don't have any additional updates beyond that.
Last one, sorry, on coronavirus.
Okay.
Johnson & Johnson CEO Alex Gorsky has suggested that people will need a yearly coronavirus vaccine booster. Do you know if Dr. Fauci or any of the medical experts agree with that assessment? And then if that's the case, would the government shift the purchasing responsibility to American citizens after this first round this summer, or is there a timeline on that?
Well, the FDA has talked about research and work they're doing on boosters, and some of that is related to variants and addressing variants and needs they may have in the future. But in terms of what is next, I think we're focused now on first getting 300 million Americans vaccinated, and then any guidelines on whether a booster will be needed, the timeline of it, we would certainly defer to health and medical experts. Go ahead.
Jen, and thank you for taking so many questions. I'd like to quickly hit on 3 points. Yesterday, the White House publicly confirmed that President Biden had mandated that he have full visibility on potential drone strikes overseas. This sounds like a potential, or it sounds like a resumption of the Obama-era so-called kill list policy. I was hoping that you could tell us what President Biden sees as his guiding principles on deciding whether to allow a strike or not.
I don't think I have anything more for you on that from the podium.
A question on New York. I'd like to confirm that President Biden intends to pick his own 4 appointees for U.S. attorneys' offices, that he intends to do all 4 of them and not leave off the Southern District.
That he intends to nominate?
Nominate his own people for each of the 4 U.S. attorney slots in New York.
I don't have anything for you either on kind of upcoming personnel announcements. Obviously, there was an announcement made just last week or the week before about U.S. attorneys, and that went through a normal process, but I can certainly talk to our personnel team and see if there's more on that front.
And another one, the focus, or one of the focuses on the Hill today is on the Capitol riot, and I wanted to follow up on that. There's been some talk about the potential need for greater surveillance of domestic threats. After 9/11, of course, the government secretly reinterpreted the Patriot Act as allowing the dragnet collection of our phone records. Is the Biden administration committed to not secretly reinterpreting laws to expand domestic surveillance?
I think the president's spoken to this in the past, including when he was vice president. Our focus right now is on, of course, supporting the hearings that are happening on the Hill, and we will remain engaged with members of Congress about how we can work together to address gaps and to prevent it from happening in the future. We also have a process that's underway and a review from our national security team on domestic violent extremism. And when that process is concluded, I'm sure there will be recommendations made on policies that should be put into place.
The administration has emphasized transparency. There would be transparency on any additional surveillance of domestic threats that would not be secretly interpreted.
I think that's fair to say. Go ahead in the back.
Hi, Jen, thanks so much. I have a couple questions. The first is, over the last few months, we've seen reports that say that people outside of Black and Hispanic and vulnerable communities have been able to access the vaccines in those communities. In California, there are wealthy residents who are using access codes. In New York, we're seeing that happen. What's the White House's plan for stopping this, and why is it still happening? This has now been happening at least over 2 months.
You're right. I've seen those reports as well, and I think one of the reports I saw was around some of the mass vaccination sites in Oakland and the concerns about whether people in the community were actually getting access to the vaccines as planned. I don't have specific data and numbers, and I can certainly talk to the COVID team, or you can, of course, ask them during one of their 3 briefings about the actual data behind it beyond the anecdotal stories, which alone are certainly concerning. But one of the pieces the president has been talking about and our team has been focused on is the fact that if you don't have internet access, right, if you don't have access to ways to easily sign up to get your vaccine, we need to continue to look for ways to get deep into communities. That's one of the reasons that the president has been so supportive of community health centers that are embedded in communities, know the people in the communities, can make phone calls and do outreach to people they know will need the vaccine. But we also need to continue to find ways to reach people who don't have internet access, who may not have the ability to sign up in a way that others are, and address some of those discrepancies. So it continues to be a big focus, and as you know, we have an entire task force focusing on addressing inequities in how we address COVID, and they're continuing to look for more ways to creatively do that and effectively address problems that are arising as we see them.
Just to clarify, on that point, there's a team that's working specifically on trying to stop wealthy residents or people from outside communities.
I think what I was conveying is, as you know, there is an equity task force that's a part of the COVID team led by Dr. Marcela Nunez-Smith. And obviously reports that individuals who are not from the communities intended to be the primary recipients of the vaccines, if that is certainly something they would focus on and work on issues to address. I would encourage you to ask them about that at the next COVID briefing, though.
Questions. The first is, you stopped short of saying that the President Biden would sign HR 40, the bill to study reparations. I just wonder, now that it's been a few days after the hearing, whether or not there's any update on that, given that the president has said that he would back a study on reparations.
So you certainly would back a study. I don't think anything's changed, though, from what I conveyed a couple of days ago.
You stopped short of saying he would sign the bill.
I said he would support a study, and he certainly would. And we'll take a look if there's legislation that is passed by Congress.
And then at the joint hearing today on the House on the attack on the Capitol, there was an officer, Captain Mendoza, who says she still has chemical burns on her face and hasn't fully healed from that attack. I wonder if the White House is considering any sort of effort or any sort of fund or any sort of help to officers and others who are still recovering from their injuries.
That's certainly something we'd be happy to have a discussion with members of Congress on, and I know they have also expressed gratitude, as has the president, for the work of the members of the Capitol Police and the sacrifices, of course, some made, but also those who have been injured in the events of January 6th, and we're certainly open to having that conversation.
One more on sexual assault, and the Pentagon says this week they'll announce the naming of a commission on sexual assault in the military. Senator Gillibrand and others have written to the president saying that this needs to be an independent commission that's outside of the DoD. I'm wondering if the president is planning on appointing anyone to that commission, if he's been briefed on this issue, and if that thought of it being set up outside of the Defense Department is top of mind.
It's certainly an issue that he has thought about, talked about, engaged with policy experts internally on, and including with Secretary Austin. I know during the transition and probably since then, but I don't have anything more for you on kind of the format of it. I think right now it's under the purview of the Department of Defense, hence why they discussed the issue. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Welcome. I'm Susan Rice, President Biden's domestic policy advisor. It's great to be with you all and with President Biden. I helped President Biden formulate and implement his domestic policy, and there's no greater priority than tackling the COVID-19 pandemic and rescuing our economy. We're here today to hear directly from you, frontline workers and first responders who are doing the very vital work and have borne the weight of the COVID-19 pandemic. You are heroes, and your service we honor. A disproportionate number of Black Americans serve as frontline workers and as first responders, putting yourselves at greater risk of contracting COVID-19. And 1 in 4 deaths from COVID-19 have been those of Black Americans. And so during this Black History Month, we wanted to say thank you, to lift up your voices and your service and your needs. The President's American Rescue Plan, if passed by Congress, will bring an end to this pandemic, and it will invest in you and your fellow frontline workers and all Americans so we can keep ourselves safe and rebuild our economy so that it works for everyone. Mr. President, joining us here today are Demetrius Alfred, he goes by Al, who is
Mr. President.
Al is a firefighter and EMT in St. Louis, Missouri. And we have Melanie Owens, a pharmacist in Chicago, Carmen Palmer, a child care worker in Columbus, Ohio, and Jeff Carter, a grocery store manager in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Thank you all so much for being here today and for sharing your stories with us. Mr. President, over to you.
Well, thanks for joining us, everyone. I know I've met Al before, and Al, thank you for all the help in the past, and we're going to try to help now, you and the firefighters and EMTs. And Melanie, I understand you're the, second or third generation pharmacist or in your family, is that right?
Yes.
Well, that's pretty impressive. That's pretty impressive. And Carmen, you do what God's work. You dealing with all those little kids and trying to figure out how you do it now and how you can safely open and how you can make it work.
I guess it's a pleasure dealing with children.
Well, I tell you what, we need you badly. And Jeff, you have too damn many high Vs around the state. I mean, I tell you what, it was always a debate whether I stop at a high V or whether I find a frozen custard stand. But that's what we did in Iowa. But all kidding aside, you all are you're basically holding the country together. I'm not being facetious. I'm being deadly earnest. You can see the looks on people's faces when they walk into your drugstore and they stand at the counter and they ask for a prescription, can't you? You can see the fear in their eyes, especially if they've gotten an unwelcome analysis like 2 of your family members have, Al. And so what I want to do today is I want you to know there's that old bad joke, I'm from the federal government, I'm here to help. But we are from the federal government and we want to help. We want to help a lot. There hasn't been, most states, you're from 4 different states, and we got St. Louis, Chicago, Columbus, and Cedar Rapids. And so, and every state, as you know, has a slightly different approach to how to deal with COVID right now. And we're trying to make sure they get all that they need, each of those states, and we're focusing, as a former ambassador said, that we're focusing on the needs, particularly of the most left behind community, the African American community. I mean, it really is across the board, but in this area specifically. As I might add, are the Latino community is being left behind, not as much, but similarly, and Pacific Islanders. So there's a lot of work to do, and that's why we want to talk to you, is to see whether we're headed in the right direction. So I'm eager to hear what's on their minds, Susan. See what you're thinking, what you think we should be doing. And now I know the guy from Iowa, Jeff, he'll ask any questions because Iowans are so spoiled. They can ask every presidential candidate. Come on, can you come over here and sit down with me for a few minutes? I want to talk to you. Right, Jeff?
Right.
So, but all kidding aside, I'm anxious to hear what's on your mind, what you think we should be doing, and then maybe in the process ask a few questions and tell you the kinds of things we're doing to try to deal with what are, we think, I hope, are the problems of the people who are keeping us floating. You're the ones that keep us going, not a joke. You are the ones that keep us going and kept the country going. You're carrying it on your back. And so thank you for what you've done so far. We got a lot more to do.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to begin by introducing our first speaker, Demetrius Alfred. We like to hear from each of you about your experiences during COVID. But Al, first I'd like to ask you to tell us about yourself. You're a 30-year firefighter, an EMT in St. Louis. You're the president of your local union and president also of the Missouri State Council of Firefighters. You and your fellow workers have been through a great deal, and we'd love to hear your experiences over the last couple of years.
Before you start, you heard that old expression, God made man, then he made a few firefighters.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you, and good afternoon, Ambassador Rice and Mr. President. It's a pleasure to be here and an honor to be able to speak to you, and good to see you again, Mr. President. We have met before, and I enjoy your company every time. Let me start off by saying, in St. Louis, the firefighters have had a tough time with COVID, going on calls. We've had to change up our direction, our protocol a little bit, with masking up and 6 feet social distancing. We've even changed the protocol that when we go on medical runs and calls, people trapped in a house, and even fires, we approach them a little bit different. We have to wear face masks. If we just talk about medical calls, we have to wear face masks and show up, and then we don't send the entire crew in anymore. We'll try to send in one guy to check out the situation, and if we can, possibly get the patient to come outside and then do the assessment and things like that. So we've really had to make some changes. We had to really look towards the government, local and state and federal, to try to get our PPE so we wouldn't, so we could go on these calls and protect ourselves and protect the citizens. And if you talk about the vaccine, we've been trying to get in line there here in Missouri and get as many guys vaccinated as possible so we can keep serving the community. But make no bones about it, St. Louis firefighters are here. We answer every call. We are resourceful and we adapt very well, and we're ready to go. We just would like the support from federal government, local, and state to keep us afloat so we can have the equipment and things to keep us going to do our job. And we'll appreciate everything you guys can do for us.
Al, let me ask you, if you had to identify the one thing you could wave a wand, the one thing that could help your women and men and the firefighters, EMTs, what do you need the most?
We would like to make certain that we could get the funding down to the local level and to the fire departments in particular. So like I said, we could still purchase the PPE to sustain us, get our equipment and things like that. And most importantly, we'd like to get support so we wouldn't have budget cuts or have to endure any pay cuts or layoffs. That's a big worry because, like I said, we respond to everything. We show up ready to go, very resourceful, and we adapt very well. But then after things are over, once the crisis has passed, it appears that sometimes the local government or management, however you want to look at it, find that the department may be easy to cut because the crisis is over. And that's one of our biggest concerns. So when you ask me if I had a major wand, a magic wand, I would say that I'd wave that wand to make sure that we get the proper funding to sustain our job so we can respond and help the citizens of our community.
Well, that's what we do in this legislation we put together. And I hope, God, it's going to pass. We provide for resources, $350 billion for emergency funding for state, local, and territorial governments. Now, we got 340 million people in America. We got a big country. And so what's happened is a lot of states have decided that because they have to balance their budgets, they can't continue to spend the same amount of revenue they were spending before. And what's happening is a lot of everything from firefighters to school teachers to a whole range of people are being laid off. We're short 6,000 teachers, firefighters. And the only thing I know working with your outfit, Al, for so long is that the only thing that keeps firefighters safe is more firefighters, literally,
Yes, sir.
literally. And so you're being cut. We also provide for $160 billion for supplies, and that would be everything from making sure we can scale vaccine distribution and testing, make sure everybody can get in there and have an opportunity to get the test. EMTs and firefighters are, when we get that done, we're going to have one less crisis you have to deal with. But look, the funds we're talking about are designed to keep teachers and school workers on the job, including child care, invest in personal protective equipment. I understand from the story I was told that you have the personal protective equipment in St. Louis, but they don't have it in Kansas City of the firefighters. Yes. And also to reduce, just increase capacity across the board. We owe you a lot. My family owes you particularly a lot. You literally, as you know, we talked, you saved my life. The EMTs in my state saved my life. Got me down to a hospital in time to save my life. And my boys saved their lives too, with the jaws of life, much earlier. So we owe you big. But what I want to do is make sure I get more specific with you and find out that, whether or not you have access to get in line. Last thing, states set the priorities for who gets the vaccine. We have now gone from having a shortage of vaccines to by the end of July, we'll have over 600 million doses of vaccine, enough to take care of everybody in the country. And we're moving as Ms. Owens knows, we're moving to make sure that drugstores, pharmacies are going to be able to be a place just like for flu shots you can go. We've just gone from, because we find that that's more accessible to an awful lot of folks who are don't have the means to travel very far, don't have the access to get to where they need to go. And they're used to their pharmacy, and they know their pharmacist, and they can get a shot. And we've gone from last week, 1 million doses to pharmacies to 2 million this week. So with the grace of God and the goodwill of neighbors, we're going to be able to significantly increase that. And Carmen, I'm pushing really hard, I mean this sincerely, for daycares to be able to open, and you need financial help to open. You can't just open just straight up. And but we'll talk about that a little bit as we go on. I don't want to take too much time at the front end here. So, look, Al, just don't be shy about letting us know what you need. And what you need in Missouri is not fundamentally different than what people need in Kansas and people need in Iowa and people need in Illinois, et cetera. So we ought to talk some more, okay?
Absolutely, Mr. President. And you know our favorite saying, we have your back.
You have, man. As one of your guys said, you have my back so much you're breaking my shoulders, pushing me.
That's all right.
Anyway, thank you, Al.
Mr. President, next I'd like to introduce Melanie Owens. Melanie, as you know, is a pharmacist on the south side of Chicago. Melanie actually contracted COVID herself last March and has now been vaccinated, and she's been administering vaccines to people in her community. Melanie, please give us a sense of your story.
Hi, Mr. President, and thank you very much, Ambassador Rice. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with you, and thank you for allowing me to share a small part of my story. As she said, I am a pharmacist in the Bronzeville neighborhood on the south side of Chicago, a pharmacy manager, and I began my career with Walgreens nearly 20 years ago. And it was the opportunity to help care for others in our communities that helped me become a pharmacist. And it didn't hurt that both of my parents are pharmacists as well. I also have a sister who's a nurse, and my brother-in-law is an engineer for the fire department, so we're all frontline workers. I did contract COVID in March of 2020 when the tests weren't readily available, so I was not able to get tested, but thankfully, with Walgreens, I was able to quarantine for 14 days with no interruption of, work or pay. But my symptoms and subsequent antibody tests did prove that I had COVID at that time. So I can really relate to what others are going through. And it has helped me to become more motivated than ever to do all I can to help the community during this pandemic. It's been a really tough year for us. But recently it's been very rewarding to start being able to go to the long-term care facilities and vaccinate the residents there. And also now it's available in the stores. My pharmacy personally is in a low middle class to predominantly Black neighborhood, and lots of the people find it, are surprised that it's very convenient and the ease of the vaccination process once they pass the scheduling portal. So, I just encourage everyone to be aware that the vaccine is here to help, make sure that they're making their neighbors and friends and family aware of their experience as they get the shots taken care of, and let them know that we're here to help them. Everyone had that assumption that they would have to go out far and wide to find the vaccine, but I think it's an awesome thing that we're starting to roll it out in these communities, in all communities, and hopefully it continues to become available. Walgreens has started a health equity program in my store, where we're making it more convenient also for customers to get their prescriptions delivered to them, or personal reminding calls to let them know that their prescriptions are ready, so that they aren't forgetting about the basics, but they don't have to worry about the social distancing and, coming in contact with other people if they don't want to leave their homes or aren't comfortable. But I got my second vaccine February 5th, and I just make sure I tell everybody that it was a wonderful experience. I feel very grateful to be able to have gotten it, along with the long-term facility workers. And I just want everyone to keep doing what they're doing and make sure that we're all doing what we need to do to get back to some kind of normalcy. So President Biden, please keep rolling out the vaccine, because it is helping to keep people alive and safe. So with that, I just want to say thank you again for this opportunity. I never thought I'd be able to speak directly with the President of the United States, and especially on Zoom. So thank you. Thank you so much for that.
Well, thank you, Melanie. Look, let me ask you a couple questions. You're in the south side of Chicago. That's where my kids' grandparents are from.
Awesome.
And people are, they don't have a whole lot of money. And a lot of people don't, and it's an older population these days.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've observed is that there is a reluctance to, if they don't know how to get online with you, a lot of people don't know how to use that. They may not have a cell phone. They may not have the ability to know how to pick the phone up and get online. And so they're reluctant. And what I found is, from the days when my dad was raising me, that sometimes people, when they don't know what to do, they're embarrassed to acknowledge they don't know how to do it. They don't know how to get it done. So how important do you think it is? One more piece of this. We also know, because of the way American medicine has taken advantage of African Americans for experimentation over the last 100 years, that there's a real reluctance that still exists in the African American community to get the vaccination, even if it's available. And I've been pleading with people, get it. If you have a chance, get it. It will save not only your life potentially, but it will save your family a little bit. So tell me about what you've sensed. I can tell you have a feel for this. Tell me, no, I really mean it. Tell me what you sense from your patients who come in to get the shot. I don't think they're afraid of a needle. It's not like, oh, a needle, but are they reluctant to deal with it? Or is it because you're an African-American woman they respect, does that make it easier for them to be able to take it?
So I would say that my customer base, for the most part, is very excited. We haven't had many people come discussing whether or not we would get it ourselves or, should they get it? It's more, when can they get it? I was more reluctant than most people, most of my customers to get it actually. But then, it just kind of felt like an obligation when I started to go to long-term care facilities. I'm here to protect them. So I needed it. And, just listening to my parents who are in their 70s, who were so eager to get it, and I was happy to be able to help them get it. It helped to change my mind. And I also had some administrative staff at the first long-term care facility that I went to change their mind based on me changing mine at that moment to get it. So, I think it's just, you can be fearful, you can have questions, but, do your due diligence and figure out what is best for you. And, like I said earlier, if this is a part of or a major key of what's going to help us move past this and to go back to being able to live normally, I feel like you should do it. It's no harm in it.
Well, we've been able to increase the supply to the states, and just in the month we've been here, by 57%. So they're getting 57% more vaccine than they did before, and we're going to, God willing, we're going to be in a position where we can significantly increase that as well. So that, and the other thing is, we have set up, and we've made another federal decision saying that we were going to use community health facilities, which usually take care of the folks who are the most in need.
Yes.
And because they know where, I'm not being facetious when I say this, they know where the people sleeping under the bridge are. They know where people who are really in real dire straits, they're going out to get them vaccinated. And so we're hoping that this helps. In addition, one of the things we're going to be able to do is part of this investment is $20 billion in the national vaccination program. As you know, the funding helps deploy community vaccinators in vaccination centers. You're one of them. You're in the community. That's why, but some of the governors were not sure that's the way to go, and I'm not picking any governor, I really mean it. They didn't understand why we made the independent decision to send vaccine directly to 600 and some, there's 667 different drug chains or drug stores out there. Why we send it directly to them, and they weren't sure why we were sending directly to child care facilities. That's what we're going to try to do now. And so, because they thought they could better decide where to use it. But I am determined to make sure we service the communities that are the ones that are the most most affected by the COVID virus when they get it and the consequences of it. But I thank you for all you do, and I really mean it, and for going into those long-term care facilities and helping there as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Mr. President, our third participant, as you know, is Carmen Palmer. Carmen is a child care worker in Columbus, Ohio. But I say child care worker, but that really doesn't do it justice. She does almost everything there is to do.
That's what I read.
She runs the food program at the child care center. She's a substitute teacher. She's a bus driver when needed. And she's also the mother of 2 of her own young children. So, Carmen, we'd love to hear your story.
You obviously have a lot of spare time, Carmen.
Of course. I just, wanted to say, thank you, President Biden and Ambassador Rice, for speaking with me and giving me this opportunity. I do appreciate that. Again, I'm Carmen Palmer, born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. I grew up in foster care. And after graduating high school, that's when I decided, for a better environment, and I moved to Ohio. And that's where I found my home here at Kitty Academy. I've been working here 5 years, and as Ambassador Rice mentioned, my 2 children both attend the child care facility. I started working there as a toddler teacher, and I was offered to share my skills in the kitchen as, the kids would call me the school chef because, I think it's cool to cook sometimes. So, and I thought that was rewarding just to combine, my love for cooking and, children. And my role is to ensure not only 0 to 5 children eat, but our school agers as well. I love providing them for nutritious meals because I, know what it's like not to, eat or know when my next meal is coming from, especially growing up in foster care. I'm a single mother, and COVID has exposed not only the flaws in the childcare system, but how frail my personal situation is. I've worked every single day, during the pandemic. I have not missed one day to try to take care of our families and our children who, need care. And me personally, if I was to get COVID or my kids was to get COVID, I have no other options. I am one of the only states that has not prioritized childcare for the vaccine. And that's concerning to me because once again, I work every single day in the pandemic. And I'm an essential worker and I'm taking care of essential workers' kids. So, and as a parent, I want to make sure I have childcare and childcare that is safe. The Haynes have installed ionizers, to improve our ventilation system. And I can only assume that is working. We provide masks for, our staff. We are washing our hands. We social distance. We do temperature checks. But, it's hard for the kids because they're used to I want to go play with my friends. We're like, no, you have to social distance. We have to keep our distance. It's hard keeping the younger kids to keep their mask up, to protect themselves. So, and our enrollment is down. And we are seeing less of our families because of the pandemic. They're not working and, they're losing their jobs. And I'm just really grateful that I'm able to still work, during the pandemic. And that's important to me to keep an employment. So.
Thank you, Carmen.
Well, Carmen, look, this legislation, which we think is going to pass, is going to help child care providers by allowing you to pay the rent, pay your utilities, your payroll, if there is one, beyond you as alone, as well as increase costs associated with the pandemic. And those costs include PPE, you mentioned ventilation, paying for ventilation improvement, small group sizes, modifications to make physical environment inside safer by providing more dividers. We're also temporarily going to increase the child care tax credit. Right now, if you make over a certain amount of money, you will get a tax credit of $2,000 now. We're going to raise that to $3,000 per child, and $3,600 for a child under the age of 6. And make it refundable, which is the big deal. Because if you're not making a lot of money and not paying taxes, you may have 2 or 3 kids, you don't get any help at all. But now what will happen is, if this passes, they will get a refundable credit for each child. If they're under 6, $3,600 check from the federal government. And the same thing for the $2,000 and so on. So they say it will cut, if we get this done, it will cut child poverty in half. But in addition to that, it will provide those parents with access to not only your daycare center, but others across the country to be able to afford it. And we're also making sure that we provide money for folks who are about to be thrown out of their homes. There's millions of people out there who can't pay the rent. And so we've deferred any cost to have to pay the rent while this pandemic is going on, because otherwise we'd be vastly increasing the homeless population, which makes no sense. And we know how important early childhood education and the child's development is. And to get through this crisis, I think we need to be sure child care providers have the funding they need to stay afloat. And you mentioned something, Carmen, that is really important. most of these kids you've been taking care of. If they were going to kindergarten or preschool, they'd be getting a free lunch program. Well,
Yes.
we got to increase the amount of money available for what used to be called the food stamp program, but it's not now. But we got to make it available, because did you ever think you'd see in one of in your hometown where you'd see miles of cars lined up in multiple lanes waiting for one box of food? This is the United States of America, for God's sake. And the idea there's that much food insecurity is just not right. So what I believe, if we get this bill passed, which we're not going to pass by a lot, but we're optimistic, we're going to make some real changes, and the child care centers are risk of closing all around the country. And what impact would it have, and the last question I'll ask, if you had to shut down? What do you think it would do to the children and the parents that now are your clients?
I mean, it will have a tremendous impact on our families. Our families are, telling us now that they can't work, and it's definitely hard to find childcare if you don't have any employment.
Yeah.
And even me as myself, I honestly wouldn't know what I could do if I didn't have childcare so I could go to work, because I have no family here. All my family is back home in Michigan.
Okay, kiddo, keep doing what you're doing. You're really, as my mom would say, you're doing God's work, kid.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, Carmen is also the only one with young kids in school, and I thought it might be worth just asking her to say a few words about how her kids have fared in the pandemic with the virtual schooling and then now hybrid schooling.
Are you able to take them to the daycare for the hybrid schooling?
Yes, I am. I actually made the joke with Ambassador Rice yesterday on saying, like, I really feared for my youngest son. He's 7 and he's a thumbsucker, and I for sure knew he was going to get COVID, because I'm like, you just put your hands in your mouth. But I enrolled them in virtual, and then my oldest daughter, her grades, she started to struggle. So I was like, okay, you needed the help. So I, switched on Mondays and Thursdays and Fridays. They attend the daycare and are willing to, help assist them, with their hybrid learning. But, sometimes, not even just my kids, but all the kids as well are dealing with their social and emotional needs of social distancing and really can't go anywhere but just school and home. So we have to, deal with those aspects of the kids as well.
Well, an awful lot of children as well as adults are going through some real, they need some help in terms of depression and mental problem. I mean, we're worried about they're just so off. They don't know exactly what's going on, and it has real impacts. And that's why we got to get them back into school. That's why we have to open up these schools. And by the way, a lot of you out there are struggling just to make ends meet, even if you have a job. But we're going to make sure you get that extra $1,400 check during the pandemic that both parties had said they supported. Even the past president said he strongly supported it. We just got to get it done now. But it'll make a difference and give you literally some breathing room. Just be able to, just a little breathing room. That's what we need to give people right now. Because everybody in this circumstance is being hurt. It's through no fault of their own. It's not their fault that the pandemic started. Well, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, Mr. President. Thank you.
Mr. President, last but by no means least, I wanted to introduce Jeff Carter. Jeff is the district store manager of 2 Hy-Vee grocery stores in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Jeff, we'd love to hear your story too.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, Ambassador Rice. I really appreciate the opportunity that I've been given to speak with you and kind of tell my story a little bit. As I said, my name's Jeff Carter. I am married to my wife, Kim Carter. We've been married for about 25 years. I do have an older son. His name is Mason. He works as a finance officer in one of the major car dealerships here in Cedar Rapids. I work for Hy-Vee, and Hy-Vee is a grocery store chain. And we have stores in Iowa, and as you mentioned, Mr. President, we have too many stores in Iowa, but we also have stores in Nebraska, Illinois, South Dakota, Missouri, Kansas, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. So we are.
I was teasing you.
I know, but we're a great company, and I really have appreciated the opportunity that I have to work for them. We employ over 88,000 employees, and during this past year, the pandemic has really challenged us to not only focus on service to our customers and our employees, but also service safety. You know, we really had to shift our focus rapidly on how we take care of our customers, how we make sure that they are safe when they come into stores. We were one of the first stores to install plexiglass shields to protect our employees and our customers. We also put directional arrows in on our floors to create social distancing so that, you know, people didn't crowd and possibly spread the virus. We also, you know, in my store and all of our stores, we had employees that from the moment we opened till when we closed, all they did was walk around the store and sanitize and clean and clean contact areas that customers and employees touched, just to make sure that the virus, you know, was limited in the possibility that it might spread. We also, you know, we installed a system called a sterile cart that, you know, we could push our grocery carts through in order to sanitize them and make sure that, you know, our customers were safe. We mandated masks for all of our employees. We passed out, you know, millions of masks, well, millions, but thousands of masks to our customers to you know, to have in case they didn't have their own when they came in our stores. We have a Mask It Out campaign asking and requiring everybody to wear a mask when they come in our stores. Through all this, I'm very, very proud of all of the employees that, you know, I worked with and employees of all of our stores, because, you know, I don't think we really consider ourselves frontline workers as we or essential workers, you know, when we're doing our jobs. But, you know, as a lot of us talked from day to day, you know, we felt as many people that we were in contact with, for many of us, it wasn't a matter of, you know, if we were going to catch the virus, it was a matter of when we were going to catch the virus. But, you know, through all this, many of our employees, you know, they put themselves on the front lines, and they did not shy away from doing their job and taking care of our customers, making sure the needs were met. And I think because a lot of the systems that we put in place, we had cases of where, you know, employees did catch the virus, but I think our numbers were surprisingly low because of some of the safety measures that we put in place. And through all that, you know, many of our employees, you know, some were a little bit, you know, concerned about going to work because they had, you know, maybe family members at home that had underlying health conditions that might put them at risk of catching the virus and possibly falling very sick, or worse, possibly death. But they still came to work to help serve our customers and do their job. On top of that, in Cedar Rapids on August 10th, we had a major weather event called the derecho that rolled through our city. It was an amazing event that I had never, ever witnessed. I'd never even heard the word derecho prior to that. We had winds of up to 120 miles an hour go through and destroy property and trees. Many trees were lost, and in fact, I actually have a campaign right now where we are, as Hy-Vee, we are getting thousands of trees into the city and surrounding areas that we can replace those trees that were lost. Many homes were damaged. Many of our employees' homes were damaged, but still, I think they put a lot of their concerns, personal concerns, on the back burner to still come in and help serve our customers. And during this derecho, we also, you know, went out into our communities and helped, you know, pass out, you know, free goods, groceries, and things like that to people in need. Many people were without power for, you know, weeks, approximately a week that the city was without power. So, you know, we were doing whatever we could to help the community. So not only did we have the derecho or the COVID to deal with, we also had a derecho that rolled through, which was another, you know, amazing challenge. But, you know, still, you know, we still persevered. and very proud and happy for the job that you know, Hy-Vee and our employees were able to do, and customers alike. We all rallied together, you know, to get through this. So now, as I mentioned before, and part of that with the derecho, I have to mention that Ambassador Rice mentioned that I am in charge of 2 stores. I actually had 3 stores, but one of our stores was badly damaged in the derecho, and we had to close it and tear it down because the damage was too far to repair the store. But we were able to, you know, relocate all the employees that worked at the store, and now they are employed elsewhere at other stores. But now, you know, I like to move forward, kind of what I call, I think we're in the recovery phase, I guess, of hopefully, you know, this virus. You know, we've dealt with trying to hold it at bay, keep people from catching it. Now I think we're in the phase of, you know, hopefully vaccinating people that we can move through this. So hopefully one day, you know, we'll be able to take down those plexiglass shields and, you know, get rid of these masks that we no longer have to wear. Maybe give a customer a handshake or a hug, thanking them for coming in. And Hy-Vee is ready. We're ready to help you, as Demetrius said. We've got back. I have 2, like I said, I have 2 stores, and like Melanie, we are vaccinating as well. So we have just recently, I sent our pharmacy team from one of my stores to a long-term care facility, and we vaccinated 120 senior citizens in that facility that had not been probably out of that facility for probably a year. And the stories that I got back from my pharmacy manager telling me that people literally had tears in their eyes from the relief and the hope that they will someday soon be able to see their loved one face to face instead of behind a window or a computer screen. And Mr. President, we have pharmacists, we have pharmacy techs, we have about 9 mobile units ready to go out into the communities to reach people that possibly cannot get the vaccine. We can go to them. We recently had an event at Drake University that, you know, we vaccinated over 1,000 people. So I think things like this, we are capable, we are ready to do to help you, because we have your back as well. And I think what we really need is we have, like I said, stores in multiple states. We just need to get the vaccine delivered so that we can go out and do our thing. We are ready to help. And once again, I very much appreciate this opportunity. It's like a dream come true, something I'll cherish for the rest of my life. And I'll probably watch this video over and over again. So thank you very much.
Jeff, it's an honor for the ambassador and I to be able to talk to you. Look, one of the things that the ambassador and I made a decision early on, to quote Franklin Roosevelt, I'm going to give it to you straight from the shoulder. Not going to play games. I'll tell you when we do it right, I'll tell you when we screwed up, and tell you we take responsibility. That's what I think all of you are doing. You're giving us the straight to the people you're working with and the people you're trying to help. And we spent much too much time ignoring this. One of the things you've all mentioned is the PPE, the protective gear, and social distancing. And I know that that Melanie knows this as a pharmacist, and all of you know it from your experience, that the way we can save, we could have saved literally an awful lot of lives if people had listened. We turned wearing masks into a political statement. If you were for this thing, you wore it. If you were for somebody else, you didn't wear it. When in fact, it's just plain basic science. Science. Social distancing, so you're not coughing on one another, the particles, the ventilation you talked about, Carmen, makes a difference in community centers and the like. And so there's so many things that we can do that are just within our own power. We're probably going to be sending out an awful lot of masks around the country very shortly, millions of them. But the point is that you all, interesting without my asking you, talked about the need to social distance. It's kind of hard to social distance in a fire truck. It's kind of hard to social distance with an EMT in the back of a wagon, but you all know it's important. And so I hope you'll I had said when I got elected that in my first 100 days, I guaranteed people we'd get at least 100 million shots in people's arms. 100 million shots in people's arms. And 30 days in, we're about 40% of the way there. What do we have, 47?
Almost 50 million.
Almost 50 million right now. And we said we're going to do 1 million shots a day. One of the things that you and Melanie know is that we had to get vaccinators. It's one thing to get vaccine delivered, another thing to get it out of that vial into a needle and into somebody's arm. And so we worked very hard. We've probably gotten another close to 4,000 people who give vaccinations, from National Guard to the Defense Department to others, and to units within commercial operations that can have people who can do the vaccination. I signed an executive order allowing former retired doctors and nurses to be able to come back and give vaccinations. And so we're going to beat this thing because of folks like you. And to the extent you can continue to have your constituencies, and they're all different, is to make sure that they understand that social distancing matters, washing your hands matters, and the whole idea of, and I don't have to tell you that, Al, you know, you had two kids affected, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. They got through it pretty good. We're blessed.
Well, thank God. So, but one of the things that, you know, again, I'm going to go back to the whole question of equity. What we're trying to do, my team and I, is get people who in fact have been most hurt by this pandemic to places where they are comfortable, where they have comfort in going. They don't feel like they're not intimidated by the circumstance. And they're usually, they're used to going to their grocery store, they're used to going to their drugstore or pharmacy. They're used to doing those things. But we also are trying to get out mobile units into communities, not only inner city, but rural communities that don't have as much access. You know, I guess they tell me the statistic is that the vast majority of the American people live within 5 miles of a pharmacy. Well, the point is that that may be the case, but if you're an older person living by yourself, you don't have a vehicle, and there's no public transportation, it's awful hard to get to that pharmacy. So we're working out ways now to provide mobile transportation, literally vans going into communities, and people, you know, getting shots that are being administered by people who people tend to trust. So I'm glad. I can't tell you how much difference you're making. We've met with people all over the country via this means, and I think there's a growing awareness that you know, injecting bleach into your system doesn't do it for you. And I'm being, you know, I mean, think about all the ridiculous things. And there is online still, there are those who are the, you know, the vaccine
deniers. Yeah.
And telling all these stories about that aren't true. So I really appreciate you and your colleagues across the country who are continuing to push and say, no, if you can get a vaccine, get it. If you can get it as quickly as you can. Socially distanced. We're now doing a study. The COVID team, they're studying whether or not once you've had the vaccine and you've had it for the better part of several weeks, the last shot, what can you do and not do in terms of being sure that you are safe? Do you still wear a mask? Do you still socially distance, et cetera? And so we're an administration that thinks science matters. Science matters. And it has to be available to the poorest among us and those who are most hurt by this COVID crisis across the board. And that's what we're doing. Do you have any questions for me? Seriously, you can ask me anything you'd like. I can tell Carmen has a good question. I don't know, she's not sure. Should I really ask him that? I don't know. You can ask me anything you want. I'm just Joe, okay? So fire away. Do you have a question?
When are you coming to see us in Columbus?
Well, I'm going to be back in Columbus. I was in Columbus, actually now it's about literally 35 days or so ago. I came through on a whistle stop, a train, when I was trying to get the nomination, when I was trying to win the election. But I like Columbus, and I'm a Democrat, but I think your governor's doing a pretty decent job of trying to get things going. I don't think there's anything political about this. Some folks are just stepping up, and he stepped up in my impression. We disagree on things. We used to serve together. I like him, but it's not I just think this is about the science. But when I come back, if you see me, you better not say Joe who, okay? Who is that guy? Joe who? What was that guy's name?
Not by the academy.
Well, I tell you what, I hope we can get to the point where that's happened. Now, the one thing I get most asked is when it's going to go back to normal. The honest to God truth is I can't tell you that. But most experts tell you that things are going to continue to change and change somewhat rapidly. I think you're going to see that next fall, it's going to be different than last fall. I think you're going to see that we're going to be going into the Christmas season better than we were. Whether it's back to complete normal, I don't know. But we're going to beat this. I promise you, we are going to together beat this. And I think that but the idea that over 500, I have a card. I carry a card with me every day with the total number of folks who have been affected by the, as of yesterday, there were 500,071 people who have died from this. 500. That's more people that died in World War I, World War II, and Vietnam combined in a year. In a year. But look, when American people set their minds to something, there's nothing we've been unable to do if we do it together. So with your help, and there's so darn many, we look at all the stuff that's, I don't know, bad or disappointing out there, but there's so darn many good, decent, honorable people in this country, and they want to get it done right. And so, in the meantime, make me one promise. You'll all take care of yourselves. We need you for real. We need you for real, okay?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you all. Thank you for your time and your sharing your thoughts. It's wonderful to be with you. Thank you, Mr. President.
And you have the number. You can call us anytime. I really mean it. Not a joke.
They know how to find me now, so.
Yeah. And
We have your email, I think.
believe me, she knows how to find me. Joe, where are you? Come here.
Mr. President, not Joe.
Well, we used to be Joe.
Oh, okay.
Still,
Well-
Joe's still good. All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Stay
Thank
well.
you.
Appreciate it.